designer for Lost in Yonkers and for Irma this season. My first show that I did was called Journey's End. It was in the 1982-83 season, so I've been here for 28 years. Had a couple of years that I wasn't here, but for the most part, almost every season since then. I think the last thing I did was Twelfth Night, but I designed the Amadeus that opened the Temple of Music and Art with Gary Gisselman directing. I did a number of shows with David Irma before he was artistic director, when he was still a guest director here. And I have done 46 or 7 at this point for the theater. Many of us had a grandma like Grandma, and I had one who was a pretty strict Norwegian, that I do recognize some of those words and some of those strict disciplines that she's trying to impart. So I recognize her. Lost in Yonkers, I designed it decades ago for Tennessee Rep, and then I also designed it for the Guthrie, and then I also designed it for a 3 Pro that was the Maltz Jupiter Theater in Florida, the Cleveland Playhouse, and Paper Mill. So I've been around the show for a long time. On Irma Vep, I met Charles Ledlam and worked with Charles Ledlam, and I saw him do the roles with Everett at the Ridiculous Theater in New York when I was living there, and I assisted a designer who we all worked with the Santa Fe Opera when Charles directed his first opera premiere. And so working with someone that sort of maniacally inspired, you kind of remember the glances, the looks, and the personality. So I think I've always carried some of what he brought to the stage for Vep, along with me. Well, for Irma Vep, it's the same set of clothes as we used 11 years ago, and of course Bob Sorensen is returning. Bob Wright has a heavy heart that he will not be returning to do it, but they're the original clothes, and since it's not a show that you can just rent for another production of whatever, it's held up quite nicely, so we'll get to revisit a great celebration of that style of work. And the original design of that, of course, there are costume changes that are under 5 seconds, and there are characters who have arguments with themselves on stage. So all of the tricks of how to do the onstage Lotzie with clothes is pretty tricky and great fun. So the Lost in Yonkers is just a great celebration of the American spirit, the family dynamic, and that sort of thing. There are quick changes in it. You do have to move through and attempt to show a passage of time with a group of people who don't have a lot of clothing and a lot of things that show passage of time in the show. So I use Bella there as someone who has the ability to have been given things from her brother and her sister and that sort of thing. I let her carry the kind of time change, so when she comes on, you go, it's another day, because Grandma's not frivolous that way. She has a couple of sets of clothes. The boys have what they could bring with them. So, and certainly Grandma wasn't going out and buying them new clothes. So.